Hey guys, I'm Mark,
I'm Alon.
and welcome to another episode of The Next Man Up. Hey listeners, welcome to the Next Man Up podcast. So glad you are with us again. My name is Mark. I'm joined by
Alon Auguste.
and it is a pleasure to have you with us. And as always, Alon, it's an honor to be able to share this space with you and some thoughts and hopefully some good content for our listeners.
Yeah, good to see you too, Mark. Honored to be with you. Good to be able to talk and, let our thoughts flow out for the world to hear.
Yeah.
As much of it is listening.
Well, we're recording a conversation.
Yeah, man.
Right?
Yeah.
And, we invite listeners into this conversation as they're listening, for sure. But also, if listeners, if you want to engage with us, just a quick reminder, feedback at thenextmanup.com. You can hit us up, or you can find us on social spaces as well, Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah. And certainly enjoy getting feedback and engagement. So if you got something to say it. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you enjoy fables and mythology and literature along those lines?
Oh, yeah, man. Oh, yeah. Probably the first book series I read was in sixth grade. Actually, it was fifth and sixth grade. But it was J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit.
Oh, setting the bar high right there.
Yeah. Like I love that. And I remember when they came out as movies. The first Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. I watched that movie 3 times in a movie theater. I'm that guy. I go see it, and I'm always picking up new things, always picking up things people are saying and thinking through stuff. So, anyway, I can geek out right there.
Yeah.
But I do. I do love a good story. I do love fables. I do love that enchanting, storyline that makes you go, huh. That's mystical. I dig that.
It's interesting because I love the Lord of the Rings movies and love the books, love the story, and there's a few others like that. But I wouldn't initially say that I am into mythology or into fables as like a general statement.
Yeah.
I think it is an awareness that I'm coming to, and I think it is in part just the story, right? Like just getting so engrossed and wrapped up in the good story, and then understanding good stories have so much to say about life. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like good comedy, you know? It gets you laughing, but you're laughing because there is so much truth in what's being said. Good stories are engaging because of the characters and because of the application that there is in how we live. Yeah. What's interesting is I don't think as on the whole, we are into mythology and into story in the same way that we used to be, at least in the West, and certainly for me, that has been true. And I'm learning as I get older to rediscover the benefits of the fables and the mythologies and the stories, and really find the salient points and the wisdom that's contained therein. But it's kind of like this newer discovery for me.
Okay.
As I get older.
Yeah.
The reason why I say all that is last year, at some point last year, I came across this story called Iron John, and it's hundreds of years old, maybe thousands of years old. It's been around for a long time. I'd never heard of it. So I picked up the children's book at the library and read through it pretty quickly. And I came across another book written by Robert Bly called Iron John, which is really a retelling of the story, but set in a commentary style. Okay. So he tells portions of the story and then gives his thoughts on the application and the meaning and connecting the dots, right?
Okay.
Like
yeah.
the expert would tease out all the different elements and make it more accessible to a commoner like me, a mere mortal. And the reason why I bring that up in this context is because Iron John speaks to the initiation of boy into man. And that is right at the heart of what we are about here. What we're doing is raising up boys to become men. And I know you haven't read the story, and
I had no clue what it was.
My guess is most of our listeners haven't even heard of this story. So I'm going to take just a brief couple minutes to retell the original story,
okay,
and then capture some of the things that Robert Bly in his book draws out. And by the way, listeners, I'll put the reference title or link or something in the show notes, and would definitely encourage for those that are into reading to give this one a look, even if you want to just read the original story. But the story starts with this prince, this boy in a kingdom. And he encounters this prisoner who is out in the open that they refer to as a wild man. So picture Chewbacca. I mean that's what I picture as the author describes the wild man. So he's in captivity, and through a series of events, the wild man convinces the prince to steal the key from his mother and release him. And so the boy does. And not in a nefarious type of way. The wild man had actually... There was a ball that bounced into the wild man's cage, and the wild man's like, hey, I'll give you your ball back if you let me out. So the boy does. And then as the wild man takes off, the boy is stricken with grief, like, oh no, I've just let you out. I'm in trouble. What do I do? And the wild man says, why don't you come with me? So they escape together into the woods, and thus begins the initiation of this boy into manhood. So the wild man takes him under his wing into the woods and really communicates to him, helps him to see his value, his strength, his worth, his ability, his specialness. Essentially communicates to him that you are awesome, and I'm going to help you to see that awesomeness. Like, builds this foundation of value and worth.
Cool.
And once that's established, over a period of time, the wild man says, okay, now it's time to re-enter the world. And so the boy goes into a different kingdom as this poor boy that's got really nothing to offer, although he's disguising his greatness. And in the story, his greatness is in the form of this beautiful golden hair, but it's metaphorical for his inner greatness, but he's disguising it. And so he finds a job in a kitchen of this kingdom, and he works away in the kitchen, and then through a series of events, he's kind of booted out of the kitchen and put into the garden, and he's out raising flowers and plants and whatnot in the garden. A prince all along, his greatness there all along, but he's doing work. Well, as you can imagine, there is a princess in this kingdom. She, through a series of events, sees his golden hair, and she starts to see the inner qualities and is able to identify who this boy really is. Not like who he is as a person, but like his greatness beyond his station, beyond his job. But he continues to hide it from everybody else. Meanwhile, the king's armies and the king and his armies ride out to defend against attack, and he goes out in a different way and becomes the hero that saves the day, but then comes back to his station in the garden, and the princess is asking, where have you been, and how was it that this strange knight came and saved the king and his armies, and yet he's still holding out or hiding in the garden. And then there's a series of competitions that involve knights, and so with the wild man's help to create the suit of armor and the steeds and all of that, he competes in these competitions 3 different times, wins 3 different times, but never reveals himself. He always rides away before the helmet is taken off and they knew who this mysterious knight is. Completes all that, and eventually he was revealed who he really is, right? Mm-hmm. His greatness and his heroicism, and as you can imagine, he falls in love with the princess. The princess was already in love with him, and they're united in marriage. And then as part of that marriage ceremony, his biological parents, the king and queen from another kingdom, they come and they're reunited with him. And the wild man himself is a king from a former kingdom that had a curse placed on him, and as a result of all of this, his greatness is revealed, and it's sort of like Beauty and the Beast, right? The curse is lifted. Yeah. I'm doing a horrible job retelling the story.
Oh no, this is interesting.
But that's how the story ends. He helps the wild man to recapture who he is and break the curse. He's reunited with his king father and queen mother, and he's united in marriage to the princess after he's gone through these series of things in his life, and has proven his worth. He's transitioned, and he's essentially been initiated from boy to man at this point. So Robert Bly then writes this whole book and teases out all the different elements. And there's so many things that I've left out of the story that Robert Bly pulls out. Okay. But the big picture that he outlines is consistent with what we talk about here. There is a process by which a boy goes through to become a man. Yeah. And you can't go right from the wild woods to marrying the princess, and you can't go right from I just stole the key from my mother to I'm the hero on the battlefield. It's like there is this process that needs to be followed, where foundations are built, layers are laid upon that foundation, and it's sequential in many ways. The process that boys must go through in order to become a man. So, it's a fascinating story. Sometimes I got lost in Bly's commentary, and it was a little bit too out there for me to follow. I tend to be a little bit more black and white in my thinking, so I got lost a little bit at times. But I was just mesmerized reading through Bly's book, both with the story as well as with all the different thoughts that are relevant today as we talk about how a boy becomes a man.
Huh. My first thought is, I wonder if they'll make this a movie.
Well, in some respects, this is almost every movie,
it sounds
right?
Like, yeah.
I mean, you brought up Lord of the Rings earlier. I was thinking about Frodo as a classic example of initiation, Mm-hmm. And I may draw some of that out a little bit later as we go. But yes, it could easily be a movie. Speechless?
Yeah, I don't have really much anything to say.
You're gonna make me go all Dan and Shay on you, and
I'm trying to gather my thoughts here, because I was piqued by the story. My interest was piqued by the story. I'm going, that sounds like a pretty interesting book to read.
Yeah.
And such. I can see. Yeah, as you laid out the story, I can see like the drawing in to become something more.
Yes.
Like happening, and you, even from what could be seen as this is a mistake.
Yeah.
By agreeing to these terms with this wild man in a cage.
What did I do?
Yeah, like, oh my gosh. Like, and how that moment, that choice turned out to be the first step of many in you becoming who you become. And so there are steps that that you take, and they come from the choices that you make.
Yeah.
I wonder in that moment for that boy, was there like everything going against, in that, but this one little thing was like a curiosity of like, but wait, like, what if?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that what if was what was the push to say, yes, go get the key from mom, unlock the door, and let this wild man out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and, for me personally, like, I look back and I go, there were moments of curiosity, the moments of, like, what if there was more? Like, I know this picture that you're painting for my life, and I know, like, things are what they are, but what if there was more? And if I could take a step to do something, and in this case, like, let this wild man out, could this be something that would spark something in my life? The adventure.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a good word.
Are you willing to, I like you brought in Frodo, but his, what would he have been? Was it his uncle?
Yeah. Bilbo?
Yeah, Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah.
Like, Bilbo Baggins, I love that. Where are you going? I'm going on an adventure. Like, he had no clue.
Right.
And then 2 seconds later, he's like, I need to go back and get my hanky.
Right.
Like,
That's right.
And so yeah, you could definitely see the layers, and I love that. And that's a good story. Like, when a story that captivates you will have you wondering, how many different connection points of life are there for you? And since we're talking about the initiation of Boys to Men, like, as a man, like, I can go, yeah, I connect with each one of those layers.
Yep.
As I'm listening to the story.
Yep.
And there's probably way more, like you said, this is just a recap. But there's probably way more layers there, but I connect with all of them. That's beautiful.
I think the layer that was the hardest for me, partly because of my wiring, partly because of my experience and all that, was just embracing the wild man.
Yeah.
And I think to kind of put this in words, my words, the wild man here is a metaphor for our inner wildness, our inner untamedness, our inner adventure, even our inner darkness.
Yeah.
And I think what was so cool about this story, and then just reflecting on some of my own experiences, is the thought that and Bly even says it. Like, here's a quote from him: "The aim is not to be the wild man, but to be in touch with the wild man." And when I was thinking about that, the image that I have is, we'll use another Lord of the Rings reference. So they're in the that mystical forest on their journey. The Fellowship has sought the protection of the elves, and the Queen Elf Galadriel meets Frodo at night, and Frodo's like, "Hey, you want this ring? Because I don't want anything to do with. I'll let you have it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because it's a heavy burden." And she sees herself. She becomes this terrible force, right? And it passes. And she said, "I have passed the test. I can go out. I can go into the West and diminish," or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like she embraced the wildness, and then was able to pull back from it before it took control of her.
Yeah.
And to master it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I see in this story, is that the wild man represents the ability to be in touch with our inner wildness, our inner adventurer, our inner strength, that thing that could go so bad and so wrong, but to be in touch with it and know that you can master it, you can control it, and it's not something you have to fear anymore because you've been there. You've been in the wild, you've experienced it, and then you can go out and let it have its proper place, but not let it control you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm sorry. The whole time you're talking, I'm thinking of where the wild things are.
Oh yeah.
But what a great, this kid goes off into the wild and realize that at some moment you're gonna have to come back.
Yep.
And you're right. The Elven Queen, she was able to go and come back.
Yeah.
And master, and that's, I guess, mastering manhood. That sounds so huge.
I wouldn't say it like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I like to pan out. I think it's more no, you're discovering self, and you're learning to wear the suit well, and what I mean by that is, it's like when you put on new clothes for the first time, and there is that moment of it's new, but it's not worn.
Yeah. It's not broken in. It doesn't fit quite right yet.
Yeah, and I think about, I use that analogy as in there were moments where loyalty didn't fit well with me, and my character, and honesty and perseverance and responsibility didn't fit well, but I was trying.
Yeah.
And then I got to a point where, these things start becoming easy, that those things wear on me very well.
Yep.
I'm used to them, so it's not as hard as when I first tried, and so that's what I mean by wearing the suit, in such, I'm sorry, I'm into comic books and whatnot, so I think of superheroes and whatnot.
Well, pick any superhero that discovers his or her powers, and it's not immediate mastery of those powers.
No.
Right?
No, not at all.
But over time, through a process, they realize who they are, how to control the gifts that they have been given, their superpowers, how to use them well in the right situations, how to refrain from using them in the wrong situations, right? It's like...
Yeah. And it's done not in your normal setting. This kid had to leave.
Yeah. Yep.
Go somewhere.
Yep.
Learn, discover where, you know what I mean? And then come back into society.
Yes.
And so, I'm not saying, we take our boys and we throw them off into the woods until they're 18 and bring them back. What I'm saying is we have to learn how to take our sons out of the context that they're in and place them in a different context to teach.
Yep.
Something.
Yep.
In other words, here is a moment to help you, take a step back and learn that you're valuable, you have worth.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And how to let that shine. You know what I'm saying? Here's a moment to step back and bolster your character in this area, and let you wield this sword, and then go back. You know what I mean? That's my pan out when I say, we learn to master.
Yeah.
You got to get a place where you learn to master these things.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And you
the
just...
wild man.
you speak to the process. And the process that Bly references is sort of the universal understanding of the process to go from boy to man really involves 5 stages. Now this is his interpretation. I probably shouldn't use the word universal, but this is his understanding of what he's seen, and it rings true to me and my understanding as well. The first step, and it's interesting, is bonding with and then separating from mom. So it's like a 2-stage there, right? Okay. First of all, you bond with, and then you begin to separate from mom. The second stage, which this is interesting too, bonding with and separating from father. And we talk a lot about the role of fathers, the active role of fathers, being engaged. But there's a component here where the boy's got to separate from the father as well. And I see that in a couple different ways. One, as the boy becomes his own person. Yeah. He may be following in the footsteps of father, but at some point becomes his own person. Also allows for the influence and input of other men in his life, not just father. Yeah. So stage 2. Stage 3, the arrival of a male mentor, which aligns with what I was just saying. I might refer to this as the guide that comes along. And I think father can play this role as well. If it's an intentional role, helping boy to become who he's supposed to be, not just helping boy to become who dad is or who dad wants him to be. Yeah. 4th stage is apprenticeship to the wild man, like what we were talking about before. Go get in touch with who you really are and learn to use that well in the right situations for self and for the benefit of others. And then the final stage is marriage to the queen or to the holy woman. And I think this is less about romance and more about love. How to reach to that pinnacle of the queen, that in his words, holy woman, but that ideal woman, and being able to love her well. Not just romance, not just conquering the relationship so that you won the girl. It's bigger than that, right? Yeah. Like pan out and see this as how to love well. And that love culminates, like the last episode that we recorded, that love culminates in the relationship with your wife, you know, the queen, so to speak. Anyway, those are the 5 stages that Bly would say boys ultimately need to pass through in order to achieve that process of becoming a man.
This thought of, well, I guess it's interesting that you said that, you know, this is not just some romance thing, but this is about learning to love well. And I would throw an added piece, like, I think it's also like learning to love people around you well. Yeah. You know, you know, and this is where I go, a lot of these stories are so medieval, knight in the shining armor, and we talked a few episodes back of my thoughts on the whole chivalry like deal and whatnot. Like I think it's important for our boys to learn to be friends with someone well. Like, what does a friend look like? Not just friend, but just people around in general. How do I honor you around me, and how do I be thoughtful and mindful of those around me, as well as you know what, enter into a relationship with somebody where like you're loving them well, and if that leads to romance, awesome. You mean if it you know, I would hope you'd have romance in your marriage, like somewhere in there. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, man, like where your emotions are connected and you're being vulnerable with someone who you find is ends up being love of your life. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's dope. Yeah. But, you know, like just even to start with the initial, like I know how to love people around me well. Yeah. That's huge and that's big. Yeah. And I can see it being something that our boys would benefit from today. Yep. You know?
Yep. We could keep going on and on and on. There's so much to pull out of this story and book, and I'm sure we'll go back to it at some point. But there's one more quote that I want to share because I think it captures the essence of what we're trying to encourage and facilitate and offer through this work here. Bly says this: when a father and son do spend long hours together, which some fathers and sons still do, we could say that a substance almost like food passes from the older body to the younger. So there's that literary expertise putting into words what happens when fathers and sons connect, spend time together. It's like this physical substance is transferred from father to son, and it's at least in the context that I envision it, it's life-giving. It's just life-giving.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And so anyway, like I said, we could keep going, but that was certainly a quote that I wanted to share.
Quote.
Yeah,
that's a great quote.
Encouraging fathers to just continue to engage, to lean in, and to see this as a process that you are on, and we'll get to this down the road, but you as a father are still in some stage of initiation and development as well. But you're also the chief guide as you're taking your sons through this, and be encouraged that it's important and it's good work, and it's work that as fathers, as men, that we're called to be about. Yeah. So
absolutely. Good stuff, man.
Iron John by Robert Bly. Highly recommend it.
Not to be mistaken with Iron Giant.
Iron Giant.
Yes, that's
comics.
It's a book and a movie.
Okay.
Animated movie about a giant robot.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that one.
When you said Iron John, I was like, do you mean Iron Giant? Like, I don't see.
Nope.
But good. Yeah. Iron John
by Robert Bly. Encourage you guys to read it if you're looking for something to read this new year. That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks for being with us once again. If you got any feedback you want to share, you can hit us up at our email address, feedback@thenextmanup.com. Otherwise, we'll call it here. And until next time.
Adios.
Adios. Hey, listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.